I'm changing now to English because it's time to introduce our first keynote coach of today, Gerd Leonhard, a well-known media futurist and CEO of the Futures Agency. Gerd travels around the world and he speaks at many major conferences and events, and he has been able to reach many professionals with his ideas. The Wall Street Journal, they called him in 2006 one of the leading media futurists of the world. He's also published a couple of books. I shouldn't read his own bio, he said, because it's very boring. But he loves to play the guitar. 10 years he did that professional. And I wanted to tell you about his new book, From Ego to Echo, that will be published this year. And probably... Hopefully, all right. But you might be talking a little bit about that today?
Yes, a little bit, yes.
A little bit that, yes. Well, Gerd is a leading expert on online commerce models, telemedia economy, social media, TV and radio 2.0. So we are really, and many more topics I must say, so we are really happy that you're here today. Please share your thoughts with us. I can't wait, we can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dankjewel. It's great to be back. It's great to see so many young people and women here. Well, it's not the same thing, but you know, young and women, of course, even better. The future is clearly not with people who grew up before any of this. So I'm very happy that you're here and listening to this. So I'm Gerd Leonhard. I work as a futurist. I live in Switzerland, but I lived in America for 14 years. So when I speak too quickly, please wave. Okay. There's a bunch of things I'm trying out today that are new. First, I'm presenting only with the iPad because I find it to be more flexible. And so if you see a couple of things that look funny, that's because it's only the second time I'm actually trying this. There's also something I'm doing for the fourth time now. I'm sharing all my books and the presentation of today on an FTP drive. It's called Cloud FTP. So if you're looking at your network list, if you have an iPad or an iPhone or any Android also, and the computer, whatever that is, then just look for Cloud FTP. And then when you log onto that network, just type in Cloud FTP in the browser, and you can download all of my books, my keynote speeches, the presentation, right now. If you want to do it later, you go to gerdcloud.com, and that's how you find all my other stuff. Okay, and of course, we have published already, I think the slideshow is already up on SlideShare. So if you're using SlideShare, don't do that while I'm speaking, you can do that later. Or if I'm boring, of course, you can do that. I'm G. Leonhard, G-L-E-O-N-H-A-R-D, on Twitter. It's pretty much on all of my slides. And if you want to tweet questions, I'll be looking at my iPhone occasionally if I can find it. I think it's still around here, yeah. And please just tweet with the hashtag MFW12 and G. Leonhard, at G. Leonhard, and I'll be seeing if I can answer your questions while I speak. So briefly what I do, people are wondering about what a futurist is. In fact, I would encourage you to pursue this kind of job in the future, because every single company will have or already has futurists looking at what happens tomorrow. What we do in my company, the Futures Agency, there's 25 of us working together globally to help companies reinvent. So what we do is not predictions or the crystal ball. It's what's called foresights. It's what you have here. Plenty of you already have. But many of my clients don't have time to look at the future because they're busy trying to make money today or tomorrow, right? So we're looking at 3 to 5 years and trying companies to help companies to reinvent. Publishers, record labels, music companies, broadcasters, big brands, and so on. We advise over 100 companies, including Google and Samsung and many others. So that's some of my clients. But basically what we do is we try to help them to sort of understand where the future is going. That's the Cloud FTP. My latest book is called The Future of Content. And that's also on the Cloud FTP. That's right on the top level. And you can also buy it on Amazon at the Kindle, for the Kindle if you have a Kindle. It's $3. I couldn't make it free. Amazon did not allow me to make it free. I don't know why. So it's $3 anyway, but if you want to, you can find this on Amazon. So briefly, just to get started, we have a serious problem today in that many of us are living in a world, not you, I can tell clearly, but many of my clients are living in a world where they are not really doing the same thing than the consumer. For example, the music business, I don't want to always talk bad about the music business, but it's irresistible. Basically, in the music business, the music business has for a long time been run by people who have their emails printed and fax it back to somebody. And no wonder they haven't given us anything worth looking at except for Steve Jobs, iTunes, and now Spotify, maybe, which in a way they have only tolerated. But more on that, I think this is the problem with what we're seeing in media today.
The what not to do with an iPad file comes
For some reason,
this
it looks
German
a little bit
clip.
funny there. Oh, okay. This is supposed to be the other way around.
Never mind watching young children with expensive toys.
Okay,
this
never
is a
mind
convincing argument.
That's interesting. It's a new variation of the same topic. But I'll tell you what it is so you can have a good laugh. It's a guy who is an older guy, obviously, using his iPad as a chopping board because he doesn't understand that it's for looking at stuff. Check it out. It's called iPad chopping on YouTube. All right. So what I'm looking to do today is to disturb you, because the purpose of looking at the future is to disturb the present. In other words, we don't change until we feel disturbed or worried, or until we have some sort of pain, or until we fall in love with something. An example for falling in love is, for example, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, who invented the Kindle because he fell in love with the idea of an e-reader, electronic reader. Nobody had asked him to make one. Very few people. It wasn't clear that people even wanted to read on this box, on an e-reader. How many have a Kindle here in this audience? Let me see who has a Kindle. Amazon Kindle. What are you reading on? Are you reading anything? Oh, there's one lonely guy. Sorry, Jeff. I hope he's not watching this. But in any case, the Amazon Kindle is now so popular that more books are sold on the Kindle than in print. Okay, that shows you something. And the Kindle, of course, is available on all different devices. Right? So he was looking to disturb the present. And so if I can disturb your future a little bit, I'd be happy for that to be the outcome of today. This thing you may know, it's fake, of course. You may know if you remember the TV show called Star Trek. Okay, there was a device called the tricorder. Okay? The tricorder is a device when you land on a lonely planet and there's a monster and you get hurt, you use the tricorder to fix yourself. Right? And the tricorder, of course, was fantasy, but it's becoming real. There's a foundation in California called the X-Prize Foundation, and they have allotted about $30 million to the creation of a tricorder. The tricorder means you can prick your finger into the device, right? A finger pricker with blood, real blood. You can cough into it, and you can measure your body functions, like pulse and stuff, and it will make a diagnosis of your disease. Okay. This device, the mission is for this device to be better than a doctor in diagnosis. Okay? That's the briefing. There's a bunch of guys working on that now. So imagine what a device like this could do if you had a device in Africa that you could prick your finger and cough into and then send it off to a doctor and the doctor could tell you what you've got. That would change the life of a lot of people that don't have doctors. And it wouldn't really threaten the doctor, except, of course, for those who would feel threatened anyway. But we are looking at exponential disruption today and speed. I mean, if there's one word that we can use to describe the current situation, it would be speed, right? I mean, on the motorway, we're driving slower than ever before, unfortunately. But on the internet, we're faster than ever. Right? All these things happening at the same time. Whitney Houston died 21 seconds for the tweet to reach the world. That used to be 45 minutes for the TV show to get a camera there. So the speed is mind-boggling, and speed of innovation is mind-boggling. It used to be the big car companies have a new car every 5 years. Then it was every 3 years. Guess what it is now? A new model every 13 months. Right? Speed, Microsoft was here for 25 years. A good, strong, solid monopoly. It's still around, actually, somewhere, I hear. Then Google came around, and they had a good 7 or 8 years, and they're also still around and going strong, right? But they only had 7 years. Now, Facebook came around, and they only have 3 or 4 years. And they're going public this week, right? Or next week. I'm not buying, so I don't really know. But Facebook is still going very strong, but it's only had a 3-year window, right? And then the next company will have 1-year windows. It's just like artists, musicians. Used to be a star for 20 years, now you're a star for 20 seconds. Right? And that is a real challenge of speed, right? So disruption, speed, all the stuff that's happening right now. And there's a great report from Ryko in The Economist called Agent of Change. You should download it. The best way to find it is Ryko, R-I-C-O-H. and agent of change. And they're talking about all the disruptions that are happening. And if you are not aware of this, you should dive into this, because that is the future where everything is going. Cheap smartphones for all. That's number one. Many people are saying that the internet will be 80% mobile in 5 years. So basically, forget the computer as an access device for media or content. It's all about mobile devices. Not mobile phones necessarily. Mobile readers, tablets, computers, projection devices. And in developing countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, there is no computer to put anywhere because there's no power in many places. They're using solar power. And of course, you don't really have a place like a desk. Right? So people are using the mobile device to go online. Like in Brazil, that's basically becoming a standard. It's all about the mobile, business-oriented social networks. You guys are on LinkedIn, yeah? Who's on LinkedIn? Okay, that's more than a Kindle. That's good to know. So, so LinkedIn is becoming the most powerful business recruiting network in the world. And guess how the recruiters are feeling about this, right? The staffing agencies or the HR departments are saying, oh my God, you know, what's happening on LinkedIn? LinkedIn has become a very, very powerful business social network. So that's really happening. Data mining, very scary part. Cloud computing, which I'll talk about. Holographic 3D video conferencing. The airlines are now getting into a business to where they will virtually transport people to the meeting. So you go to the airport, but you don't take off. Right? You go into a room, you buy a ticket to go to Shanghai, you go into a 3D holographic room, right? And then you're transported and you pay €100 for that. And you don't fly, you save carbon and, you know, save the trees and so on. So that's happening. Augmented reality. If you haven't looked into this, you know, there's a Dutch company called Layar, pretty amazing stuff, L-A-Y-A-R. Amazing. What it does, basically quite simple, is you can hold up the mobile phone over a point of interest, or a painting, or even a person, even though it's not actually supposed to work with persons, or a landmark, and it will tell you in the same window superimposed over the image, you get superimposed the data of the object. So you can hold it up to the Golden Gate Bridge and we'll tell you the history. You can click on, you know, whether your friends have liked it and so on and so on. It's in Japan, it's widely used for dating. So you hold it up over the person's head, and if you see a social network profile that the other person likes cats or dogs, then you move on because you don't want to go further. You know, it's widely used. I just be kind of strange to use here. Adoption of visual and voice interfaces like Siri. Artificial intelligence, computers. This is not science fiction. Remember that about 15 years ago, we would have said, you know, it's impossible to be on top of Mount Everest and make a video broadcast to the world. Now it's a standard. If you ever get to be on top of Mount Everest, you can make a YouTube video right there. It's real. I mean, it's mind-boggling how fast we've moved, and the next 5 years will be even crazier. 3 billion people connecting in Russia, India, Brazil, China, Indonesia. 250 million people in Indonesia that never, many of them, of course, on the islands, never even had television. Now they get to watch YouTube on the mobile. Imagine what that does to religion and habits, education, you know, censorship. I mean, this is obviously a very, very complex issue. But when it's about the future of media, let me just remind you, there's no recipe. There's absolutely no recipe. What works for The Economist, maybe, what works for Wired magazine or Popular Mechanics or, you know, whatever, may not work for us. What works in Holland may not even work in Germany or vice versa. It's completely different from each company. So we have to make our own recipes. I'm a cook, by the way, a hobby cook, so the way I do recipes, I just kind of be inspired what they use, and then the rest of it I mess up myself. So that's basically what you have to do. There's no recipe here. What we can say, however, is that because the instruments have changed, you know, technology has changed, we also changed the entire social theory. Marshall McLuhan said, of course, in 1971, we're entering a time where the world is a global village. So Marshall McLuhan actually talked about Facebook. Yeah, because that is the global village now, at least part of it. Right? So we have changed the instruments, and many companies are really wondering, like, how in the world do we run this orchestra? All these instruments of change. What do we do? Well, the answer is you have to engage, of course. You have to actually use it like it's real. It's like if you want to learn how to swim, you have to get wet. You can't look at it from the outside, so that's cool. I wish I knew what it was like. So this is really a big problem, I think, for a lot of companies, is to get their heads around, because social media is not marketing. If you work for a company that has social media pinned to the marketing department, right? So the marketing department, which is mostly women in many companies, older companies especially, right? They do the social media because they can do the talking. Right? I mean, that thought is, of course, utterly ridiculous. I mean, the idea of social media is kind of ridiculous to begin with, because we're really talking about a social operating system, a much larger story. Social media is about content, it's about the brand. It's about who you are. Do you want to have a conversation, or do you just want to broadcast top down? That's why record labels, until just recently, never used social media. The people that worked there, they were doing it, right? But in terms of strategy, they were not interested in talking. I mean, one of my key experiences when I worked in the music business, going to a CEO of a big record label and saying, you know what, you know a lot about what's happening in music, why don't you blog? And he was happy with that. But the guys in his company were saying, like, why would you want to do, why would you don't run a blog? Because what happens when you run a blog, people actually talk to you. We don't want to talk to people. We just want to buy our damn music. So, I mean, if your thought is that you're going to use social media to sell stuff, right, think again. And it's not to sell stuff, it's to make yourself open and attractive, so people can consider buying something from you. It's interaction before the transaction. So now in the media world, many of you may be looking to go into media, whatever that will mean in 5 years. The New York Times, one of my favorite publications. They recently embarked on a course that I call My Way or the Highway, which is to say that you can ride on my road or you can go in the field. The New York Times is one of my favorite publications, my favorite writers. And I've been considering what I should do here, because it's a real problem. You know, this thing down in the corner is when you visit a New York Times page, it used to be, now they have this way of telling with a cookie, of course, that you've visited more than 20 times. So therefore, when you come the 21st time, they say, now you have to pay to see more of it. So in other words, they punish me for my interest. Now they've taken the approach of great wisdom and brought it down to 10 visits. And so after, of course, I use different devices so I can trick them or just delete the cookie, for heaven's sake. But in any case, I can only read 10 times. And then I say, okay, fine, what do you want? I go to their page. And their page says, we have the special offer for $5, you know. But really what they want is $5.95 a week. $300 a year to read the New York Times on my iPad. Now let's take a vote here right now, not to be mean to the New York Times, you know. I love the New York Times. So if you're listening, I love you. But anyway, who would buy the New York Times for $300 a year on a digital device? Let's see. Nobody? Okay, I'm like here, I'm in the middle of this. I've been toying with this idea. And why wouldn't we do this? Because we're cheap? Or we're definitely not cheap. We live in Holland. No, you live in Holland. Right? Or I live in Switzerland, even worse. So we're not really cheap, right? The value isn't clear. I mean, half of the stuff I'm going to read on the New York Times, I can read other places. Like the Herald Tribune, which is owned by the New York Times, or Boston.com, or whatever. And the 40 magazine articles, like from Thomas Friedman or whatever that I really want to read, I can also read somewhere else because they're syndicated. So if they said $50 a year, plus sort of an upsell to where I can do different tools, I can have a community, which they have for the New York Times, I can do other things, or maybe I can have the feature spoken out to me when I'm driving, as an audio version, which The Economist, for example, does, which is fantastic, right? That's very easy to do. They don't offer that. So when I'm driving, I can listen to Thomas Friedman speak. That would be cool. And I would do it for $50. How many people would do it for $50 a year? Okay, so we have radically brought up the number of people, right? So this teaches us a lesson. These guys are good guys. They have high-quality journalism that costs a lot of money to produce. Investigative reporting is expensive, and so on, right? But it's not clear what the sort of, you know, the proposition is that makes us basically fold and say, yes, of course, I'll do this. So what they have done is they said basically, the approach is to force us to pay. And we can pretty much summarize from the internet today that it's impossible to force people to pay. Forcing to pay is like forcing to love. It's the same thing. You can attract people to pay, and you can give them irresistible values to pay. And they will pay. I mean, if we're seeing what we're paying on the web, people are paying for LinkedIn, amazingly enough, so that they can email more people. And it's $20. I'm paying on LinkedIn. Who's paying on LinkedIn? Anyone? Okay, yeah, it's a freemium approach. Last year, they made $460 million. Obviously not from you guys, it's only one. But, so, I mean, that approach works. Right? It actually works. Now, I'll show you another example here, if I can conjure it up here real quick. Giving this a try here for pretty much the first time. Okay, why do we like the iPad stuff? Why do we like what's being offered here? Here's an example with Spotify. Do you guys know Spotify? Yeah, okay, who's using Spotify? Okay, who's paying for Spotify? Okay, I wish all countries were like Holland, you know. But basically the cool thing about Spotify is not that it's free music, because, you know, if we use advertising, it's free, right? It's not really about that. It's not actually about the music distribution, because we can listen to free music on YouTube. Yeah? But it's the convenience of all of this. This is the iPad app for Spotify. Right? We love this app. I pay 10 euros a month just for the app, because guess what? It's about the interface. I can get free music anywhere. I can listen to Groove Shark or YouTube. I never pay anything. I pay because I have this nicely organized list. Here's my song list that I can listen to, and so on. I'm still gonna go. Okay, there you go. I didn't actually want to play this, but oh, there you go. Okay, okay. Sorry, just 1 second here. This is what happens when you use new stuff. You know, then you can figure out how to actually make it work live. This is an app I use called Reflection, just in case you're interested in what it actually is. Not that you would care, but in theory it works quite nicely, as you can tell. Okay, so go back to my slides here for a second, see if I can find this again. Okay, so basically with this kind of idea of enforcing payment, it won't work, but if I add values, for example in Spotify, I was going to show you the most valuable part is seeing what my friends are listening to. Because I can integrate my Facebook friends and I can say, okay, Jonathan has a fantastic playlist, yeah, I love his taste, so click, subscribe, download. Right? It's a filter. So if we look further in this direction, basically the problem is not, come on, don't desert me now. Okay, you see this is not perfect, but you know, you get to see the intermediate picture a bunch of times. So the problem is not the pay, it's the wall. Jeff Jarvis said that, and he's very clear. It's not that we're not willing to pay, but we don't want to be held up on the road with a gun. We want to get to that point where we're saying, you know what, it's quite reasonable. If we do it like this, and the reader basically has this paywall, then 2%, as we can see in this very room, right, 1 or 2% convert, hop over the paywall, cough up the money. And of course, there's other things like, for example, Popular Science and Popular Mechanic, which are great apps by Bonnier in Sweden. They're 15 euros a year for all of the magazines. So lots of people are hopping over that paywall because it's a geek magazine and it's cheap. But what we have to do is we have to build a way to get over the wall piece by piece. Right? That's called attraction. That's called value. That's why we do it. And that is a process of saying, okay, can we find a way to gradually get people to accept that they want to make a payment? Right, so it's not that, it's about the ease of use, the choice, the price, added values. I mean, this graph shows you the reality of what's happening. Netflix is the biggest movie service in America, 24 million subscribers, unlimited streaming of all of the movies. You guys may be aware that Netflix, of course, unfortunately doesn't work in Europe. You can make it work, but I won't tell you how, because it's IP protected, you know, but basically $10 a month gets you unlimited movies. 24 million people subscribing. So if anybody tells me that we're not willing to pay for content, I'm saying like, yeah, we're not doing this right. We have to find a way. I mean, clearly $10 for movies, unlimited, is 1/10 of my cable bill. Do I need cable when I have Netflix? The answer is no. Maybe for sports, of course. Right? But this is precisely why we're not getting it here. Because the movie studios are saying, you know, these guys are very happy paying €100 a month for cable, and they don't watch any of it. So why should we give them a cheaper alternative that's better for them but not for us? And therefore, Netflix doesn't get permission. Well, the bottom line is really this: as consumers, until we stop buying the old stuff because we don't like it, they're not going to give us the new stuff. And that's the same in music. Until we stop buying CDs, we're not going to get the kinds of deals that we need for streaming music. And that's kind of a sad reality, right? Because for the musician, it's good to sell CDs. I mean, to sell units. So, I mean, clearly you can see here on this slide that Netflix is growing like crazy, the growth of and the other guys, Comcast, DirecTV, Time Warner, they're shrinking. Because why would people do that? It's called over-the-top television. And we will have that in Europe in the next 3 to 5 years, that everybody that has a brand will go over the top, which means on the internet, to distribute directly. TED.com, you guys know TED.com, I'm sure. 550 million views of these videos. YouTube is about to become the biggest broadcaster in the world. Facebook is a broadcaster, and what is Facebook doing? Facebook is broadcasting us. I mean, we are the program of Facebook. Some evil people have said that Facebook is a perpetual virtual reality show. And it's actually true. Well, it's a game. You know, what can you say? It's kind of interesting to watch, actually, that we are the stars of Facebook, sending stuff to each other. And Facebook is using us as the content. We are the content of Facebook. So when Facebook goes public next week and fetches maybe, I don't know, anywhere between $20 and $100 billion, you know what they're going to do? They're going to put up platforms for content, commission content, like the BBC or the Dutch television. YouTube has already allocated, I think, $220 million into the production of original content for YouTube. Facebook will put a fund together that I estimate will be between $500 million and $1 billion in funding for commissioning content, not producing themselves, but commissioning. You know? And the same goes for Hulu and Netflix and Amazon and Cisco and Intel and Twitter. Twitter television is coming. I mean, Twitter is the next CNN, basically. And so here we have clearly the situation that, you know, we are extremely lucky to be in this situation because the old stuff is dying. And of course, many of the old things will come around in a different mutation. For example, broadcasters and radio stations do have a strong function, which is curation. I mean, they're making the program, and that is the important part, not how the program gets to us. That is delivered in different ways. But we have massive convergence now. We've talked about this 1999 when Napster first came around. We were saying, like, oh, pretty soon, people, it's just MP3s. And it's the jukebox in the sky. Of course, that was a little bit early. And many people lost their shirt or their whole suit in that process. Right? But it offers massive opportunities now to do this. Sorry about this, too many fingers. In this stuff, so basically in this convergence, you know, if you can get into building companies in this convergence, then you're talking about disruption, basically. So search and social is converging. This is Google's biggest problem. Now that we're searching, you know, if I want to have sushi in London, do I go to Google? I still may go there, but I'm going to find the Guide Michelin from 2 years ago, or whatever. I go to TripAdvisor or Quip, which are apps, of course, closed apps, or I go to Facebook or Twitter, and I can look up Sushi London, and I can go to the place, and people are still sitting there who posted the review on Twitter. They're still there. It's real time. We're about real time and social stuff. Television and the internet is converging, which is the biggest thing that happened to television, of course. Extremely lucky that it's such a good fit. I mean, the television industry would be dead if it wasn't for the convergence with the internet. Because basically, television is a great medium to do all the stuff that we used to do on the computer, which is to search for and connect with friends, communicate while we watch the program. 44% of Americans, and no, 71% of Americans and 44% of English people are actually using an app while they're watching TV. They're using a mobile device to talk on Twitter and have conversations about the TV show. It's called the second screen. I mean, this is great news for television people. Complete online-offline convergence. I mean, all of you are pretty much always online. If we want to be offline, it's a mental state where we say, I've had enough, I got to disconnect. And now, funny part, of course, is being offline is a luxury. It's the reverse of what it used to be. So now we say we shut off the connection, and we spend a day without the internet. It's like spending a day without a shower or something. All of a sudden we feel like we're not really there, which is kind of strange. But basically what's happening is that it's completely normal to be always on, and that is also a real challenge for our brain, of course. It's a lot of stuff happening there. Fragmentation, aggregation, users, producers. I mean, this convergence offers a lot of fields for startups and for really, really interesting stuff. Most of that is driven by technology, of course, but not entirely only. So what we're also going to see, of course, is that all of the telcos, the telecom companies, the mobile operators, the ISPs, they're getting into media. Not in the sense of producing it or owning it, but in the sense of being a platform for it. Because guess what they're noticing? That people use the web to get the content. And that content is going to come one way or the other, illegally or legally or half legally or subscribed or what, doesn't matter. But the amount of data that goes to the network is exploding every day. The more tablets we have, the more stuff we tap into. The more we send around, the more Dropbox and YouTube and Skype and what have you we're doing, and we're trading content, right? We're actually trading content. So the telecoms are realizing if they're not part of this game and of the new kind of advertising, they become a total commodity, like a helper, helping us to get the content, but not actually participating. The amount of traffic that Google is causing on the mobile internet is now 12%. 12% of the entire traffic is caused by Google. So many mobile operators have said, Google should pay us. Of course, it will never happen. They have to engage. So in Denmark, we have a mobile phone company, TDC, and an ISP operator that has bundled free music into the service. Because when they use free music, it becomes attractive to buy the service. Telia and Spotify in Sweden, same story. We're going to see every single mobile operator around the world finding a way to bundle content. For example, if you sign up with Vodafone or with O2, you get 10 free books a month, 10 free Kindle books. Because guess, it's a lot cheaper for them to do that than to stand by and not be involved. At least in the midterm run. I mean, right now, of course, they don't know anything about the media business. So they're really worried about how can they be part of something they don't know. There's a lot of fear there. And what goes with this discussion, of course, is net neutrality. The idea that people can get to the internet in the same way, which is a crucial part of what's happening, what should be happening on the web. So this also leads to a very simple realization. If we're living in this world, and that's the world that we had until 2 years ago, we have the content guys, we have telecoms, technology people, device makers, consumer electronics, everybody in their own silo. That world is dead. Right? Because simply we can't live without each other. There won't be a music industry without the telecom industry. There won't be a telecom industry without the device makers, and the device makers with the advertisers, right? So it's basically game over for this idea of the silos. So you have to know a lot about media. You have to know about advertising, you have to know about technology, you have to know about sociology, and you have to know about maybe economics even, who knows? Right? So there's a lot of stuff to do in the media business in the future. I always say the future is already here, which is taken from William Gibson's saying the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. Siri. You guys know what Siri is, right? You can speak into the iPhone and have it respond to your questions whether Siri loves you or not. The most popular question on Siri, by the way. It tells you something about our poor lives here. But anyway, the future is already here. When, we have voice control. We can change shopping windows by going by and touching it. We can get an MP3 from a bus stop, right? And we can do all these things like the new Google glasses that basically superimpose all kinds of data like a pilot while we're walking, so we cannot communicate with anyone anymore. We can just look at our glasses. But the future is already here. Instant translation. I was in the Google Labs a few months ago. I spoke into a device in German. It came out in Chinese in real time, and 91% correct. Right? It's mind-boggling. That is going to happen within 3 years. So you can watch any content, any video, you can talk to people on the phone, it will be instantly translated in real time, in text and sooner or later in words, Dutch is easy, but of course, say Finnish or so would be difficult. Will take a little bit longer. So translation means, for example, you can write something in any language and publish it, and people can read it in Hebrew if they want to. And that's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, it's going to be a mind-boggling change. Gesture control, where you can grab stuff like, you know, you see Minority Report or The Matrix, right? Where you can go up and grab this file from thin air. I wish I could do that now, you know. That would be cool. I'm looking forward to that. Be a lot of grabbing to do. I need 4 hands for that. But gesture control and grabbing stuff, I mean, this is going to be reality. Already is for doctors, for example, being able to grab a patient's file remotely because they can't press any keys because of the keeping it sterile, right? So they use this kind of gesture. And then we have augmented humans. As Ray Kurzweil in Singularity proposes to change humans to actually be, parentheses, more powerful and also older, of course. You know? Stay alive forever. That is definitely a trend that we have to look at. I don't have much time to get into this. So real quick here, what's happening in terms of data. I mean, we're aware of this, that basically data networks are getting so powerful, they're everywhere, and they're becoming much faster with LTE and WiMAX and all the stuff that's happening, right? The storage cost is dropping, network access is increasing, CPU cost is dropping, bandwidth cost is dropping. So this means cheaper traffic, cheaper mobile phones, cheaper devices, lower cost, higher speed. Guess what that means? Right? The internet is a giant copy machine. I mean, anywhere, anytime. You can hold up your mobile phone now and make a DVD quality recording and upload it to YouTube and say, you know, this is, you know, whatever. You can comment on it. Right? That's already standard. I mean, many rock concerts, this is a real problem for a concert promoter. Right? Somebody in the first line goes like this, records the whole thing, makes a DVD. And you don't even know he's wearing one, right? It's like a tiny little thing on top of your baseball cap. So this is going now beyond Moore's law. Moore's law is the law of exponentiality. It's the exploding amount of traffic. And so you're extremely lucky now to be in this business if you're looking to be in the media business, because now we've just made 3 huge leaps on the internet. When I got first on the web in 1995, you know, we're happy to have a first browser. And AOL, where you would listen for the bing, 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 to actually say, oh, I'm on the internet. Right? So now we have made 3 important leaps. First of all, the web has become social in a way that we're all interconnected. You know, 6 degrees of separation, basically. We're all connected in one way or the other. And this is very powerful, but it's also very time-consuming and sometimes quite stressful to figure out, you know, what does the connection mean and how do you juggle this? Right? This is, of course, takes some getting used to. Then we have the local web that allows us to say we're here and connect with others who are also here, or receive offers. For example, if you're on Facebook and you like the Gap, then if you go into a mall and you check in, the Gap will send you a promotion. In the US and many places in malls, you get a free pair of jeans just for liking the Gap. When you hit the like button and you check in, the Gap says, come by and pick your free pair of jeans, which costs, I don't know, 40 cents. But anyway, it's a good promotion, right? Good thought. And largely mobile. I mean, these things have changed the world. You know how much it costs to build this device called an iPad? Right? $62. We pay 800 euros to buy whatever it is, right? But a Samsung device or a generic sort of Android device, in India you can buy an Android tablet for $32 called the Aakash. People buy a lot of those, and basically the price is dropping down to $10. Right? So very soon we have $10 devices that work pretty well. They're not iPads, but hey, you know, they work. Right? And so the world is moving quickly towards mobile, which is fantastic news for all content creators. It's not so good news for content distributors. Right? Because distributors make their money with the friction. I will go somewhere else to use an app to download this. There's a friction and I have to pay. Sometimes I'm willing and sometimes I'm not. But it's great for the creators, of course, themselves. We're living now in a mobile-first world, right? In a world where we're basically going to interact on mobile devices before we do anything. Hello, are you still there? Okay, sorry about this. As you can say, I think it's my wireless box that's doing this. So far, many of you may have ended up being on the network, which is the problem. Sorry about this. Now it's really down. Okay, sorry. See, when you use Apple equipment, you don't usually have this problem, but... Okay. But I know what to do, which is an advantage, in a way. Not that I have rehearsed this, but... Come on. Huh? Yes, that's right. That's exactly what it is. Okay, sorry about this. Here we are, okay. Come on. Okay, has it crashed again here? This is interesting because, you know, basically what's happening is that we can use technology in a new way, but then, of course, it's always messing us up. And I've been reluctant in the past to get anywhere close to this, so let me see what I can do here now. Okay. So, in a mobile-first world, we're basically looking at a situation where it's a complete reset in terms of how we do stuff. How we communicate, for example, when you're at the flight gate, waiting for a flight, you use an app called Flight Tracker. You will know more about the airplane leaving than the woman at the gate. Okay? And of course, they don't really like this idea that you know the flight has been cancelled before they announce it because you use Flight Tracker. You use a different database. Right? I mean, that's basically empowerment for everyone. And this could be potentially a nirvana, as Kleiner Perkins, who's the lead investor in Facebook, about to get very, 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 very rich from this. They've said basically the smartphones are going from the roughly 1 billion that we have now to 5.6 billion mobile phone subscribers having smartphones. Imagine what that will do for reading, for education, for communications, for branding, for advertising. It's quite possibly a certain kind of madness, because clearly, you know, that many people engaging is going to be quite serious. I mean, in 2017, we'll have 5 billion people connected. 75% is my estimation on the mobile internet, using the mobile as the primary turf. 50 or so major platforms. Google Play, RDO, SimFi, Twitter, Amazon, Cisco, Intel, HP. We'll have all these platforms and a $250 billion advertising market on digital networks, or digital advertising. Right now, that's, you know, mobile advertising is like 2% of the entire global budget. Right? It's very small. I mean, think about the growth that we're going to see here and what that will mean for advertising. Here's a projection by 2017 from this company saying that mobile-only internet will be huge in Nigeria, Kenya, Indonesia, and so on. People using the web on a mobile device only. So there's one simple lesson from this. If you work for a company that has a website, it's time to mobilize everything. Mobile interface, mobile design, everything. I don't mean apps. I mean just open web mobile version. That's why you see everybody gearing up towards creating mobile websites, because clearly that's what we're going to be using. In fact, my next project that I'm starting will be mobile only. You could see it on the computer, but it will have a mobile interface to begin with. So basically, the sort of the keywords today are mobile, social, cloud computing. Everything that we do, you saw with Spotify, Netflix, and so on, moving into the cloud. The last one is FLF, which means feels like free. Very important term. What it means is that we feel like we're not actually making a big payment, but we are paying indirectly. It's much like when you go to the bathroom here, you don't have to put your credit card in to flush the toilet. Okay? It just flushes. But somebody pays for the water. At home, you pay for the water, so if I come to your house, then you pay for me, right? That's called feels like free. There's a payment being done, and it's very expensive, in fact, water, and water companies can be very rich, like Vivendi. Right? But feels like free is very important. If you see what's happening with the tablet sales forecasts, you know, that is a huge opportunity, but not if we're going to nail it down like we nailed down, you know, CD distribution, like we're closing the place. Now, basically, I think The Economist has a great research report that just published a report on their strategy, internet strategy, and they're talking about curated mobile immersion, you know, to get inside of what you're doing, to actually be immersed and find a way to use media to get inside. And this is a good thing about apps, is that once you're inside, you're more like in a closed place, so you're much more likely to give all your attention, which is a good thing and a bad thing. They call it reading, not browsing, as a differentiator. Right? But in general, you know, we can see what's happening as the economist is quoting Alan Greenspan, you know who he is from the US. He says the economic product of the US has become predominantly conceptual. Ideas. And it's not about selling stuff anymore, it's about selling ideas, selling knowledge, which is content, I guess you could say. Huh? So from hard goods to soft goods, and then we can see in media it goes from the media.them, which is, you know, somebody making a program for you, to media.us, right? Which is basically, we make the program on Spotify, we make the program on YouTube, we make the program more or less on Google News by clicking, we make the program on Twitter. And the good news, of course, is that these two are completely merging. So the professionals who made the media.them, who were the central people, are now becoming part of this, and vice versa, which is good news because, of course, the more of us are involved in making media, the more filters we need. And this is the future of radio, clearly. Because, you know, to make a nice playlist of music, there's 62 million published songs. And so who's the expert on making a playlist? I mean, if I'm not full-time curating my music, I'm looking for somebody else to do it. So I listen to KPFA or KCRW or BBC Radio 1 or whatever because they make a list. They make the curation. So the future of content and media is also very much about curation, filtering, programming, making sense, as it has always been, really. So in the social operating system, I call this a social OS rather than social media, it's about being a magnet, attracting people. I mean, what's so attractive about The Guardian? Okay, people always saying The Guardian is losing lots of money. That's true. But it has become one of the most attractive places on the web. The same goes for The Atlantic, for example, which I read a lot, or The New Yorker magazine, right? Or Popular Mechanic, or The Huffington Post, or whatever. Right? You have to attract people, and the attraction of the Huffington Post was so strong that they've basically taken over AOL. Well, AOL was the reverse, was like a magnet kicking people out. So basically, you can say today it's about attracting people into be network or be gone in the end. And in a way, now we have this problem on the social networks, is that we're starting to feel like we're bleeding data. And this is taken from the New York Times, fantastic illustration, is that we're basically at that point to where we have to learn new responsibilities. I mean, we could make a fool of ourselves, you know, 20 years ago by going into a bar and basically just making ridiculous statements and making lots of noise. We could do that in real time, and now we can do it on Facebook. Okay. But what's the difference? The difference is that we feel responsible. We know when we go to the bar to do this, what happens. Everybody talks about it. The same happens on Facebook. So we have to learn new responsibilities. Who we share with, what we share, at what time. Okay. There's even an app now that you can download that unposts what you post the night before from the club, for example. Forgot what it's called. It's like the go back machine or something, right? That basically deletes all the stuff that you posted when you were drunk. So what it comes down to is that it's now, because of the internet, we have extremely powerful tools at our disposal. And we have to learn how to be responsible. It may actually also need some regulation eventually. Pretty sure that Facebook will be regulated, you know, by the time people get around to it, as to how that works with our private data. And Andrew is here tomorrow. Andrew Keane is a good friend of mine. I don't agree with Andrew in about 98% that he says. But on the other side, right, there is a cult of publicity. And Andrew is going to talk about that, right? The cult of publicity, for example, this is the Palms Hotel in Las Vegas. If you ever had the misfortune to go to Las Vegas, yeah, don't stay there. But the publicity cult here is that when you have a certain rating on Twitter, you can get a network called Cloud, or PR Index, to give you a number. And they use an algorithm to figure out how important you are on Twitter, however that works, you know. Probably just some 14-year-old genius who made it. But so they figure out what the rating is. And if you're over 50 and you check into the Palms Hotel, you get an upgrade because you're important, parenthesis, right? I mean, actually, I've tried it at other places. It works. And basically what happens here is that we're getting benefit from being public. And this is a real chicken and the egg, right? This is why you're on LinkedIn, because you want to share just in case you're looking for a new job, right? Or you want to build a network just in case you're looking for a job 20 years from now. And that's, for some reason, also why we publish things, because we want to be found. But then we shouldn't forget, you know, the purpose of sharing is not necessarily to create a cloud rating. Okay? I mean, there is a sort of simplification happening here, and Andrew will talk about that. We have to also be careful that we still have privacy and that we still have value as people, rather than as algorithms. I mean, basically what you see here, this is my cloud rating. I don't know how my cloud rating, I mean, again, I don't care, but 56, 72, whatever, it's going to be 150 next month, I don't know. But aren't humans a lot more complex than algorithms? And so we really have to ask this question, what the hell? I mean, interesting, yes, but really, does it really matter? I'm not so sure. I think it's an interesting tool to read. You know, but we can't take this as our entire reality, otherwise we turn into robots. We're just going to tweet when it's the most powerful time to tweet. Right? Well, it is kind of a game, right? I mean, I'm actually quite serious about this. The internet has turned the whole world into a bit of a game, which is a good thing. It's called gamification. Right? And so advertisers are using this now. For example, when you're looking to take a cruise ship trip, you can play a cruise ship game. You can download this and you can play the game and get into what it would be like to be on the cruise ship, which is cool, right? It's a game. Foursquare is a game. I'm the mayor of XYZ. I can feel important, or I just have fun. You know, Facebook is a game. Right? It's an interesting game. And of course, it has games on games like Farmville. Right? So that's kind of an interesting angle. So if you want to look at an interesting curve, I think gamification would be one of those. I'll skip this one because we don't have enough time to go through all of this. So now we have this issue, you know, from the real person that we meet, real face. How much time do we have? I'm good. Okay, good. So basically what happens here is that now we have this handshake between the real person and the virtual person. And many of those issues, they come up for the first time. This issue between self-promotion and sharing, you know, where's the border there? And selling and sharing, and you know, what does that mean? So many of these things we have to really be careful about those first-time issues. And if you have kids, my kids are 17 and 22, they have to understand obviously what it means to do this and why they're doing it. And is it going to last? I mean, I get this question every day about Facebook. I mean, Facebook clearly is the infrastructure of our communication now. It's like a highway. I mean, imagine if Facebook died. Of course we could live, but it's like we'd have to take another road. I would have to go on a country road rather than the freeway. So Facebook has a couple of good years being the infrastructure, you know, maybe to some degree a bit of a walled garden there. So Kevin Kelly, who's the co-founder of Wired magazine, he said something very important the other day, or years ago. He said, basically, we're becoming people of the screen. I mean, look at all of you guys. We all have screens that we're messing around with all the time. In the car, there's a DVD player behind the driver's seat. Right? I mean, there's the other day I went in a cab in Hong Kong, and the guy had 6 screens on his windshield. Right? His navigation, he was doing Facebook while he was driving, of course, going like this, right? And he had a QQ, which is Weibo, the Chinese Twitter, all that on different screens in the car, going like this the whole time. Right? Every screen is becoming some kind of connected television and radio. I mean, if you're in the television business, it can't be better than this, except for, of course, unfortunately, you don't control them. You can't control what people do on those screens because they have, for the first time now, they have options. So what's going to happen, for example, when the Premier League says, you know what, we don't really need to be only on cable or satellite, we can go directly with Apple. Let's have Apple give us $1 billion, and then Apple gets to have exclusive rights to the Premier League and football, and you can only watch it on Apple. I mean, these deals are very likely to happen in the next couple of years, and that puts the fear of God into pay TV people, of course, right? Especially sports. So going direct, connected television, and the good news is, of course, that it's a perfect match with television, in fact, to do that if you open this technology. So people call this a second screen. You may have heard of an app called ZBox or Mizo. If you have not, you should look for second screen apps, and basically you can watch television, and as you're watching TV, the sound of the TV show is analyzed, and the app knows what you're watching. It's pretty easy to do, actually, using a technology called Shazam. It's been around for a long time. So you monitor what's happening, and then the app says you're watching, what do you call it? Let's say you're watching Columbo, okay? I'm just going back to very old examples here, okay? Okay, and you want to buy a beagle, that's it, yes. Then the app will tell you where you can buy a beagle close by, because they know there's a beagle right in the scene that you're just now watching, okay? Or somebody else can Twitter something, and you see it on the app, and the producers of shows in the UK are now watching the conversation about the previous show as it's going on to change the next show. They're actually monitoring the social conversation. So part of this two-way street will become completely normal, even for old people, because these apps will be running on voice control. So I gave an iPad to my mother, who's 75. It works better than this one, as you can see. But my mother thinks it's the television. She calls it the television. Right? And she watches television from bed using various apps that I've given her, and the internet, of course. And when it's not working, she calls me and says, the television is broken. I said, this is an iPad. You're talking about the iPad. No, I'm talking about the television. Right? Because it's so easy. Now, imagine you can add voice control to this, where you can just speak, which is what's coming this year from Apple, most likely, voice control of video content. Another real challenge that we have in this world is, of course, massive fragmentation. Because now we have all these choices. It's like restaurants in Amsterdam. Where are you going to go? I mean, you have 150 choices. If you go to YouTube, all the choices you have, I mean, you could spend all day, and of course, YouTube is trying to solve this problem, right, by filtering and by curation. Right? But basically what's happening here is that a lot of the big TV companies are worried about this fragmenting viewership, because it used to be that we have 71% of the population or so watching the same show, and therefore the advertising was very expensive. Now American Idol in America gets 7% of Americans. I Love Lucy and those kind of shows, 74%. That was, I don't know, 200 years ago. But it's becoming a massive challenge. So the question you may want to ask to you, is it better as a company if you serve this guy here with the shades? Okay. You serve him, you get 100% of him. Right? Is that better than getting a 0.5% of all of these guys? Well, clearly the answer is, niche media is the future. I mean, we will have mass mediums, clearly. But it's going to be extremely hard to distract me from my niche, which is also a bad thing, because I may not actually be hearing what else is going on. I mean, that's called the filter bubble, which we don't really have time to get into. But basically what's happening here is that we have to be very good at finding our audience, much better than before. And TED.com is a perfect example, right? They found this audience of intellectually interested people who would listen to how somebody invented a helicopter that can fly backwards or something, whatever it is, right? I mean, it's an interesting turf that used to be taken by Wired or by geek magazines or by conference videos which are really boring and so on. They found the niche, and they own the niche, and they're worth a lot now. They own this niche. So it's much better to own the niche. Much better to figure out, okay, so how exactly does it work? How do people want to talk to me? Why are they interested, and so on? Okay, here's a key point that we're seeing in the future of media, and many of you, of course, are already living this. Who's using Flipboard? Yeah, Flipboard? Yeah, okay. Flipboard is an app where you integrate your Twitter and Facebook friends and make an online, a digital version of a magazine that changes every time you bring it up. I would dare show it to you, but at this point I'm not. So basically what we see happening with Flipboard is that Flipboard is about access, right? Because it accesses the stream of media, and then it makes a nice interface, and it makes a nice package, so I can actually read it nicely. I don't have to buy Business Week, because I only have this one piece of Business Week that works well. Right? And in music, we're clearly there. What was the last time any of you guys have bought a CD? Anybody want to admit that they've still bought a CD? If you give us okay, all right, sorry about that. I didn't want to insult you, but you're stupid. I'm just kidding. CD and DVDs, if you give a DVD for Christmas now, like if I give a DVD to my son, he's saying, what the hell are you doing? Are you mad? Right? It's like, access is about access. Now we're saying, like, any movie, any music, any game, we'll just click somewhere, and then some are free, some are not, but it's about access. It's about finding stuff. Yes, we like ownership. We like books. Some of us like CDs or vinyl or whatever, but it's a fashion item. I mean, very soon we're having digital bookshelves in our living room. I mean, this is already there, it's just expensive. I went to a friend's house in Berkeley the other day, and he had all his Kindle books on the digital bookshelf that looked totally real. And projected into the bookshelf, actually, right? And you can hit it, and it brings up the book, and you can zoom it, then temporarily lend it from his library, like you can do on the Kindle, right? And that's sort of Star Trek stuff, but that will be the case, right? That already works for CD, iTunes, of course, all that kind of stuff. Right? So for the consumer, what we're looking at here is a disembodiment of media. News, right? I mean, if you take newspaper, cut off the paper, right? Just kick the paper, then you're fine. People want news. They're willing to pay, not just for the news, but for the whole experience, which I'll talk about in a second. But basically what we see here is this is our huge change to make a paradigm change, right? In music, I mean, music only lived basically in an artificial space for 50, 60 years, which were, of course, vinyl records and CDs. Because music is not about a copy of a song. There's a lot more to music than a copy of a song. And of course, 98% of artists never made any money whatsoever by selling copies of songs. I mean, it's only the famous ones that we know that made all the money, at the top, less than 1%. Huh? So here, access, not ownership, you can see clearly with the Kindle. I mean, I have about 100 books that I read now on my Kindle. I don't have to take them around. If I want to read a novel at home, I buy the novel, I read it in the bathtub. Don't use the Kindle in the bathtub, really. But, you know, it's about that. And the price is going to radically come down from the 15 euros, which is just like print, to something like 4 or 5 euros. And in fact, now you can see Kindle singles, which my latest book is sort of an example of that, for $1 or $2. I mean, ask yourself a simple question. As an author, you're going to spend 100 hours writing a 40-page book about the future of Holland. Not Holland, but, you know, the French guy, but Holland, right? Then if you have a good idea, you write 40 pages, you pull it up, it's €1, right? You send it to your friends. Why wouldn't I buy that from you for €1? And how long does it take? It takes 2 days to publish. So I published my last book, The Future of Content, which is a collection of all my stories in the future of content. Within a week, I sold 2,200 copies. It's $3 each. You know, it's not financially that interesting because I obviously had to spend time on doing it. But, I mean, the process is completely different. I go on direct. And now we can see here with music, digital music sales, and that is really only iTunes. This is pathetic, right? But it's true. I mean, look at this line here. This is not going anywhere. And, I mean, it's basically from 22 to 27. Okay, that's a slight increase there. But basically, it's not really, I mean, it went to 32 million, right? And then it's now streaming and access on demand is exploding. We can see where this is going. People care a lot less about ownership, except for when they're willing to pay a premium for ownership. So we're going to see stuff like, you know, if you go to the airport and you go on the airplane, if you're old-fashioned, you can print out your magazine, your New York Times edition of your personalized copy at the check-in. Just like you're printing a boarding pass, you can say, print my New York Times, and when you go there, it's ready, but it's your entirely personalized version because you like paper, and you'll pay €5. Print on demand. I would not use it, but, you know, you can't use a electronic reader when you're taken off, right? So for those 10 minutes, you'd have to print something. Right. So access, not ownership. Music is first. Clearly, I mean, we can see this right here with the jukebox in the sky. The unbundling of media. What happened when iTunes came around? Everybody said, you know, I just want to buy one song, and this is what we've got, right? This is a huge pyramid of buying single sales. It's called cherry picking. So we just bought one song. But that's not a solution because it's $1 each, so we're not going to pay $10,000 for all the songs that we want on iTunes. So we basically can say it's the end of distribution as the key success factor, as the metric, and the gatekeeper. The end of distribution as a place of saying, you know, we sold 500,000 units of X, Y, Z. That is still going strong, of course, and it won't completely go away. But I mean, if we're looking at here, for example, you know, all over the place, we have pretty much the same development, and the global recorded music sales are proving it. Okay, let me jump ahead a little bit because otherwise we'll be here tonight. Well, you'll be here tonight anyway, but not listening to what I have to say. So the challenge number one is really quite simple. For the consumer, which is us, access to content is totally cheap compared to owning content. So you can say that the last 5 years have proven a relationship of 10 to 1, roughly. In other words, if we're going to buy a song on a CD, it will be $1 or €1 each. Online, we're willing to pay about 10 cents. And if all the DVDs of the world went online and were available to us, we're willing to pay about a 10% range, like $1.50 or €2 or so, to watch it, rather than €20 to buy it. And that's sort of the logic of what's happening here, right? Now, the good news is, of course, the publisher of the FT said is that the paradox is that news publishers need to unpick is that even as their revenues sink and the faith is shaken, demand for the product has never been greater. This is the paradox. Demand for music, films, TV shows, news is greater than ever before, but it's not so easy to force people into a payment mechanism because distribution is open, de facto open, legally open in many places as well. So basically, this sucking sound here is the money evaporating from the old system of distributing copies. And basically 70–90% value reduction. So what we have to figure out is what are the new values that we can put in that place. And Kevin Kelly calls those the new generatives. Because there's no way we can prevent this. The only way to prevent that people can use the internet to find alternative ways of content, like YouTube is the biggest competitor of Spotify, you could say, free music. Using download helper or so, you can do whatever you want on YouTube, right? You guys probably do that all the time, right? So basically, in that competition, how can we figure out how to be more beneficial to the user? What do we do? And that brings up the issue of piracy. Fred Wilson, who's the lead investor in Twitter, he said, restricting access to content is a bad business model in the age of a global network that costs nothing to distribute. Now, this creates a lot of friction because clearly, if you're talking to a lot of people at big TV studios or record labels, they're saying, you know what, we won't license this content because if we do, it changes the business model. Spotify, you guys are fans? Obviously, Spotify is owned by some 30% by the record labels. Yeah? The record labels, the majors and the independents, would not give the music to Spotify without ownership in the company. Right? Now, if that is not extortion, I don't know what is. Right? Imagine a system to where you would want to fix a problem for somebody who owns the rights. And they would say, first, you pay XYZ. I don't know what that reminds you of, but first you pay XYZ, then you give us a piece of what you do, and then we're going to have a say about how you do it. And that can't possibly work. I mean, clearly, there's something broken here. Huh? I mean, we have the old order, and we have the new order, and in between we have the pirate world. Right? No wonder the pirate party is doing so great. Right? Because they're exposing all the things that have come up that are so ridiculous, you can have a laugh, you can have a cabaret show about this, right? I mean, how is that supposed to be solved? Right, so piracy essentially is, these are all the issues, when I talk to a lot of people who are rights holders, controlling our consumption, make content unavailable, enforce the payment, restrict the sharing. Now, in principle, all of us would say, some of those things may be reasonable, so you can make money. Okay? But this is wishful thinking. I mean, if anybody's going to do that to us, we'll tell them to go the hell away and go somewhere else. Right? I mean, clearly that's not a business model. That's a dictatorship. So what we have to do is figure out, if we can't force people to pay, then how do we get them to pay? How do we provide enough value? And then, of course, there's laws like SOPA and PIPA and ACTA and CISPA and whatever else there is, right? It's the idea of locking people up and kicking them off the internet like in France, which has done absolutely zero for anyone except for the lawyers, right, who are making a killing in the process, and the lobbyists and consultants. As Peter Drucker has said, there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that should not be done at all. So basically, The Economist brings it down. Rory Sutherland, the chair of the IPA, says, "What we're prepared to pay for things is extraordinarily subjective and incredibly contextually determined. What we're willing to pay is completely different in different situations, in different countries, in different cultures, in different circumstances." Imagine this: you go to a gig in a bar, okay? You really like the band. The band has a CD, which is, people still sell CDs at gigs, right? You buy the CD for 20 euros because you love the band and maybe you had a drink or two, right? So it works. But you go home, are you going to go to Amazon and buy their CD? No way in hell are you going to buy their CD afterwards. So impulse buying, context, that's very important. That's how we get people's money. So imagine, for example, the Metropolitan Opera in New York, which I just bought the ticket because I'm going in June. It's like $200 to go. But now you can go and you can be virtually in the opera in any movie theater around the world. There's 280 of them. You can go and pay 10 euros for the ticket, and they set up a 3D sound system and a screen. And you can be virtually in the opera for $10 in the motion theater in Iowa. And people are going. It's a success. That's called timeliness, authenticity, being there. It's the next best thing than going to New York. So people are willing to pay, right? So we have to figure out how it depends. And the most important part of this, I discussed last year, is freemium. Right? The idea of saying something is sort of free, but then there's a premium that you can also buy. This is by far the most successful business model on the internet. But I have to warn you, of course, you can't make something free that has a very high cost. So it has to be something that can be done at a low cost, and then when you unlock the next level, that also has to be very uncostly. For example, on LinkedIn, if you're using LinkedIn and you're paying $20 to email more people, they just unlock the database that says, you can do this. Right? That's the flag. Right? And that's a $20 flag. No cost. Free money. Skype is free. But if you want a number in Hong Kong for your Chinese friends to call you, it's $15. That's basically just a way of saying that you pay for the phone calls. Right? But the other way around. Yeah, okay. So basically what has to happen here is that we have to think about how we can build on an access-based model that will include lots of things bundled and for sort of free. How can we build the new generatives, the upselling, the premium services? We have to create these. And there's lots of people looking at this in print media and television and radio. How do we actually do this? And my friend Ross Dawson, who's also a futurist, he did a chart here that you can download called the Newscape. That shows how people buy news, right, because of all the added values. Filtering, relevance, aggregation, community, reputation, all that extra stuff. Right? So we have to build income streams around the content, basically based on this kind of model, rather than actually selling the content. And we can take some questions on this very soon as well. Let me just wrap this up with one quick word on this. Right? If we are successful to do this in the newspaper business, right? Kill the paper, keep the news. That's where we should be going with this. And how can we sell the news? How can we sell advertising around the news? We have to add lots of value. It becomes really sticky. Right? Eventually, most newspapers will completely drop the paper for that reason, because it's mostly a cost factor. But then again, of course, it carries the advertising, which is a strong vehicle. So Kevin Kelly puts this list. You can download the slide later and look at all this stuff. Talking about all the stuff of new generatives, for example, packaging. And I have an example on this I want to show you real quick here. There's the net. There is a website called Wolfgang's Vault that allows you to listen to concerts, thousands of them. But if you want to keep it and download a really high-quality FLAC file, you pay. Björk, for example, has her record of Ophelia. You can listen to it for free pretty much anywhere. You can download this app for $12 and get all the added values. The slide shows the pictures, the community, the connection with Brooke. You can email her, you can Twitter her. You can do that all through the app. So the app becomes a little bit like a CD in a way, which may not be a long-lasting approach really in the long run. So let me do a quick summary here. I think very importantly, here's one thing, okay? We shouldn't bank too heavily on walled gardens. Okay, basically what's happening with Facebook is that, Facebook is a walled garden in itself. It's a subsection of the internet. We shouldn't let Facebook become the internet. I mean, that would be ridiculous, clearly. Right? Because they would be handing ownership to a large part of what we do to a closed entity. I mean, I love Facebook for a lot of reasons, but it has its own way. I mean, being inside of something has the benefit that it's regulated and sort of organized, like Apple, right? If you're inside of the Apple empire, you feel safe because you've paid so much money, and then every time something else comes up, you pay more, but you feel like, you're inside of this and it works, right? Which means it's safe. But we shouldn't bank too heavily on just walled gardens and apps. I mean, what we're going to see in the next 5 years is that we will have, for good reasons, some more closed places, and for other reasons, we have a lot more open spaces. And we need to also make sure that our legislation and our politicians realize that the internet is not a space that everything is for sale. There's a few other things that matter apart from closing and making money of it. So you can ask the question, is this the internet that we really want? To be walled gardens and locks. So I think we need to also be sure that we support other ideas that are open, which I think Google is trying to stay on that open side of things, at least for the time being there. So the key points to remember, okay? And then we really get some questions. It's a mobile world now. I mean this really in the sense of all the action will be on mobile devices. All the content consumption is not about computers. It is the mobile and the television converging. It's social, local, mobile, and the cloud, and it's about disruption. We have to be able to disrupt what happens. It's about access, not just ownership. I put just in there as a tiny hint towards that there is still some ownership there, right? But not just that. Piracy is unmet demand, value is derived around the content, data is the new oil, and feels like free. That's sort of the mission for the next 5 years. How do we rebuild media? And I think we really do have to rebuild it. We have to reboot it. There's a lot of things that we just can't do as we've always done before. And so I think you're lucky to be in this world, and I hope this was interesting to you. I have an app you can download called Futurist. It's $100. No, I'm just kidding. It's free, and you can get it on Android and the iPhone. And, of course, my book, The Future of Content, that you can download right now or later. So now we should, throw some bombs or take some questions, or okay.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Yes. We have short time for some very important questions. Is there anyone who I could give the microphone who has an important question for Gerd Leonhard? Anyone on the tweets? Yes. Did you check, Gerd?
Yeah, it says, what are you doing with this stupid... No, just kidding. Okay. Is there a question? There's a Dutch question.
A Dutch question.
Can you read this? What scenes are you had doing?
Oh, that's about the sound here today.
It's not a real question, okay. Does anybody have a real-life question? I mean, can you... Oh, yes, okay. Yes, oh, yeah.
There,
okay.
I'll give you the microphone.
I have one question about feminization. You stated, well, marketing departments in traditional companies are crowded by women. I'm not quite sure what you said furthermore, but the people that block off their content into walled gardens are mostly men. So do you see a parallel there between men and women and closed and open internet in the future?
Well, that would be kind of obvious, right? I mean, clearly, my view is that if we had more women running things, we'd probably have less wars, right? And we'd have another way of finding a compromise. But I mean, in companies, it's kind of interesting to see that companies give the jobs that involve talking and thinking and communicating to the women, right? The worker bees and the stupid guys running around, doing stuff. Those are the guys, right? They're just sort of fulfilling the plan, right? And I think it would be much better if we looked at social media as a way of integrating all of those, right? Because one thing that's a real problem is that if our only mission in the company is to make money, then we'll eventually die. right? Because we have this tunnel vision. Right? And that's really quite difficult to sustain. I think the solution is, and this is becoming a standard now in many companies, that 3 to 5% of your time should be spent on talking and having conversations and experimenting, which is completely unlike what most companies want. In fact, this is why most companies lock down Facebook. You can't get on Facebook, and so you're still not. Right? I mean, if you work for this kind of company, it's time to look for a new job. But basically, I think this is a big issue: is that we're not allowed to actually waste time. Right? And I can tell you one thing: if you're not prepared to either be bored or to waste time or to experiment and take a risk, you won't be here in business, and you won't do anything in 10 years because you're not inventing anything. And as Greenspan has said, basically, the value of our economy is based on invention, right? So based on ideas and concepts, and much less about building cars or building stuff, which is still important, right? But it's about ideas.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I have another question here.
Gerd, I'm curious about the future of Europe. Do you think that what you've been talking about so far, most of that has been developed in Silicon Valley. Do you see a future for Silicon Polder?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, the future of America is, Middle America is about to become the next India. Right? Because basically what we see happen in America is that all of the issues of the past have been stacked up to wait forever to be resolved some eventual time later. And that's just now coming back. So what's happening, I think, in terms of innovation or so, that America is still the place because of the lifestyle, the pioneering cowboy style in a way, that gets people to actually take a risk, right? Which is a good thing. But I think Europe is ideally suited actually to be in the middle between the American style and the Asian style, which is a little bit copying what America has done, because we also have some other values. And this is what it comes down to, I think, in terms of the internet and media. If most of this will become sort of some giant machine dishing us up stuff that's based on algorithms, that is a particular worldview that I don't find very interesting, right? Because there's no discovery, there's no serendipity, there's no mystery, right? And I think we have that here in Europe, which is a big asset because of, we care about a few other things than money, right? So to answer your question, I think Europe really needs to get into the spirit of innovation and risk. This is our biggest problem. And I hope you take a chance to take a lead while you can, and because we have much less incentive. And in Switzerland, where I live, there's about the graduates that graduate from college. There's about 4% of them who start something on their own. Do you know what 4%? Do you know what the number is in America? Latest number, 31%. Start something. I mean, we really need to get into starting stuff, and then I think we have just as brilliant scientists, or we just are not incentivized. The bad thing about America there is also that, of course, in America you have this extreme thinking of getting rich quick kind of idea that the investors have in Silicon Valley, which leads to these huge bubbles of investment and total collapse, just a week later, right? Driven by greed, essentially. Right? So I think we have a more balanced view of that in Europe, but we do need money to invest, so this is important.
Yes. Thank you so much. That was the last question that we could ask, Gerd. Gerd, thank you so much for your thoughts and sharing all your thoughts with us. I actually think that all the participants in this program, they will all download it, because we will definitely want to go back to all your different ideas and all your slides during this week. It might be one of our archives that we will be using.
I will leave the Gerd Cloud on, the FTP server. I'll just put it somewhere. You can download the PDF anytime in this room for the next 2 hours or so. It should reach about till 5 meters or so.
Thank you so much. I think we need to give him another big hand for his.
Thank you very much.